Well, all right. Here we go. Happy Wednesday, guys. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you all to who are joining us on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube or on Twitter or X or whatever platform you choose to consume this content. My name is Mike Shaman. I'm CEO of Gen City Labs. If you have landed here, you have landed in a space where we are doing every other week sessions with various brand marketers and agency luminaries to talk about technology, events, and topics that will impact the marketing world. Today with me, we have MK Trees, formerly Badowski. Now we have a new last name.
As I try to come off mute, Granados. That's what
Granados.
you gotta get used to, yeah.
First time I've said that because MK just got hitched this last weekend. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have the fabulous Koa, otherwise known as Eric Arvi, our head of Web3 strategy here at Gen City Labs. Eric, you're going to have to wave when I call your name. There you go. That way they don't think that you're some crotchety dude in a white hat. Who is Mr. Mike Moreno, our head of business
My
development.
connection's really bad. Sorry.
All good, all good. And Mike Moreno, who's been in the events and brand industry for many, many moons.
Ever. With still the same name, though. I'm still the same darn last name.
Well, there you go. Well, we might not have Eric so outside of a nice introduction for him, but we will see if he is able to get internet connectivity spun up. So today, our topic du jour is Gen City Labs, or GCL, hot takes, the future of brands in Web3. And I will say, let me do a little bit of shameless self-promotion. I will be talking at Advertising Week in New York next week about a similar topic about brandom and fandom and Web3 activations, along with Live Nation, along with the head of La Liga North America, and one of our amazing agency partners, Mia Choi of Moss. So if you guys happen to be out at Advertising Week, let us know. We would love to see you at our session. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. It's going to be a really busy time. But our lead in to that will be some hot takes about what Web3 is doing today and how it's going to intersect with the brand world. So
yeah. I think adding to that too, of like why now and stuff, we're in this weird space where the early adopters have jumped in and have existing platforms and campaigns and strategies for Web3. And I feel like a lot of marketers and event leaders and the folks we talk to the most, a lot of them have sat back and waited to see if this Web3 thing really is big, if it really is necessary, if it really does serve some purpose that, you know, isn't met in their marketing strategies so far. And so I think this is kind of an interesting time of stepping back and going, what does 2024 hold? What groundwork are brands laying today? Or what notes should they be taking from those early adopters? Because there's definitely some things to do and not to do based on what we've seen in the market so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. It definitely falls into the category of it started off as a sprint, but now it's starting to look a little bit more like a marathon to get, you know, just like, and it's not different than most of the technologies and approaches that we've dealt with in the past. They go through that hyped opportunity stage, and a lot of the opportunity around Web3 and you know, blockchain, NFTs, and all the components of it, metaverse, seemed so obvious at a glance when you first dive into it, that the opportunity seems obvious. And I wish I had a buck for every time I said, this is not going to go away. But now it definitely seems like there's the inertia of the push, and then now the inertia of it's complex, and I feel like I need more information to move forward, is where the brands are. I don't envy that position. You feel like there's an opportunity and you want to seize it, but it's not as straightforward as it might appear.
Yeah, and I think that the meta has changed dramatically and radically over the last year, 18 months, 24 months. because what started off in the space as people minting NFTs, selling them, using it as a way to drive revenue into into a project, all of the sudden has become nobody has any money to mint these things, and now the opportunity really is a little bit more to talk about infrastructure and how can existing tools and platforms which are currently being built and released every day impact a brand's efforts in terms of its consumer interaction, in terms of its loyalty with its consumers, and in terms of its entire marketing stack, because I think that potential exists. Welcome back, Koa. We can see you.
I am I'm hard lined in now.
Oh,
Okay.
Nice.
there we
It
go.
was smooth sailing.
Okay, so wait, Shaman, hot take number one then, based off of what you said. Marketers should be rejoicing if they come to the table in the right way with their Web3 strategy, that it is a marketing effort. It is possibly a free effort for their community and fans. It is not the revenue driver that might have been making them feel some pressure in the past. I mean, there's strategies now that make them, it falls into the cost center category, but it takes away that sales pressure that I think some of the early adopters were feeling.
My TLDR like buzzy title for that is you are not going to make money selling NFTs. How's that?
It's a little bit of a reality check, but hopefully it empowers marketers to go, this is absolutely in your territory. This is an experience or a campaign you can deliver, not
the trick is making money selling NFTs and using it as a revenue source versus you can generate a ton of value though. Like that's the deal. It will be indirect revenue. It will be greater loyalty from your consumers. It'll be greater interaction. It'll be deepening your relationship with them. There are a number of different ways to achieve that by providing different elements of value and using blockchain and using NFTs and Web3 to be able to do that. But the meta of we can release an NFT and sell it for millions and millions of dollars is non-existent anymore. It was for, there was a very small window of time in which that may have been an opportunity. It no longer exists. But that doesn't mean that you cannot capture and generate a ton of value with the technology.
Yeah, it seems like there's, the way that it reaches individual consumers in basically as a benefit direct to them is where it needs to get, as opposed to, we're still kind of stuck on the features and benefits on the, for lack of a better term, the approach and the technology side. An analogy would be like an old, that everybody's familiar with analogy would be Wi-Fi way back 20 years ago. I remember there was a Wi-Fi alliance that was trying to get into an event that I was producing about technology. And I was like, what? So you guys are the Wi-Fi alliance, literally the 802.11b alliance. Like, what the heck does that mean to the average guy, right? And a guy that was in the panel of that, they were talking about the protocols and everything and the way to deliver it. And somebody said, well, what does this all mean? Somebody in the eye, what does this all mean to us? And he goes, you know what? It's going to mean something when you're going to check into a hotel somewhere. And instead of looking at this as something I'd love to have at my hotel, you simply won't check in if they don't have it for free. It's going to be that advantageous and that obvious. And some of the components of the things that we've heard over the last 2 years related to decentralization, which has an obvious benefit for an individual consumer. It's just, we're still at I feel like we're at this clunky information stage where it's obvious decentralization has a benefit at the individual consumer level, but explaining why and how the rubber meets the road on a daily basis is still not there yet.
I agree. And I feel like it wasn't that long ago that, you really had to be on the bleeding edge of, of technology to get involved in Web3. And it's still the case because I feel like the UX right now is still a big barrier. Certainly for the average consumer, we have, sort of an an inside joke at GCL that if it doesn't pass the mom test, you probably heard this say this, but if it doesn't pass the mom test, it's not going to fly for a major brand activation. And, you know, at the end of the day, the consumers don't care about the technology. They care about it making their lives easier, saving them time, saving them money. And certainly with what Mike had said about, you know, brands aren't going to be selling NFTs, but maybe giving them away and having that be an access point, a new product line or a new way to connect with the consumer is certainly going to be paired with custodial wallets, or in other words, just your typical login. I'm going to create an account. I'm going to use my Google. I'm going to use my Apple or whatever I'm going to use, something familiar to me. Whatever happens on the back end, I don't necessarily care about. If it makes my life easier, great. If it brings me more connected to the brand that I love because I like, you know, Adidas or whatever, and I can get some, you know, discounts on shoes or clothing or whatever, great. But at the end of the day, I don't need to know what a wallet is or how to use it or a public-private key pair or a seed phrase. I start talking about that stuff and, you know, my family's eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
That's buzzy title number 2. Consumers don't care about your technology stack.
That's right.
They really don't.
Yeah.
There was a point at which you could use NFT as a marketing gimmick and a way to capture eyeballs and attention. Consumers don't care. They care about efficiency. They care about value. They care about having an elevated experience. But much like they don't care, you know, they don't call when you send them an image. They don't say, oh, did you send me a JPEG? Did you send me something, you know, or when you send me a movie, oh, you send me a .mov, or did you send that as a something else? Like, no, they just care that they got some content and they got some quality content.
So, but okay, realistically though, the word NFT can be divisive. So not only is it a choice whether, you know, to tune down the jargon just for accessibility and adoptability, but at this point, there's like a PR issue at times with what the perception of some audiences have with NFTs. Yeah. Is that something brands are expected to navigate at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that brands, I think the category like suffers under the 30,000 foot level, all things are going to change quickly based on this hype that now, like, to me, the biggest, when you looked at it that way, in the way that, you know, this, for lack of a better term, was rolled out in the beginning, and what the massive change and get on board and brands that are going to be left behind, what that hype created was an expectation that all the interoperability was going to be worked out quickly, and where you should take a footprint and the approach you should take was going to be more easily navigated. And, you know, we all know these technologies, man, if you can go from early adopter to ubiquitous in 10 years, you've nailed the hell out of it.
Yeah. I think that's about right for a timeline here, and where let's call it. I know that it, you know, Ethereum started much earlier, but in terms of like more widespread adoption, I'm going to call it 2020, 2021 when it really started. So we're probably another 6 years away from ubiquity. Who knows? Obviously, don't have a crystal ball. You know, it's funny. I was having this debate with my best friend over the weekend and my son about, you know, how the recent Rolling Stone article came out, NFTs are dead, right? And this idea that the PR problem is that an NFT is associated with a cartoon JPEG, right? And frankly, neither my son nor my best friend cared about the fact that I was trying to make a distinction between the technology that wraps ownership and whatever of anything, and then what it is that it's wrapping. Whether that's a piece of art, whether that is a membership to something, whether that represents ownership of a physical thing, that's what brought me into the space. But at the end of the day, as we, you know, talked about a few minutes ago, nobody cares about that. But there is a real stigma right now with the term, and we talked about this, I feel like a year ago or something, and I still think the term NFT, non-fungible token, is a great name for what it is. It's just unfortunate that it has this that is association with JPEGs that were at one point trading for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, but really it was the artwork or the membership that has the value, right? The technology is a separate thing. Anyway,
and it really is about when you look at why Web3, it is important to understand that the technology stack that you are building on is there because there's an exceptional infrastructure that a lot of digital ownership is going to be running on. So one of the reasons to do it is to future-proof your business and your efforts, right?
Yeah.
You are getting ahead of things by creating and actually adapting this ecosystem that's going to be very important to consumers and to everybody. Anybody that wants to own digital assets is going to need to be able to authenticate those assets, and there's no better way to do that than blockchain. So what it comes down to is really, can I future-proof my business? Can I leverage this technology in a unique way, right? Because there are a lot of things that you can use Web3 for that you can do in Web2, right? If you're creating a basic account with a username and password, and you're giving somebody ownership of a thing, and you're keeping that database somewhere. Those are things that can be done in either way. The trick is that Web3, when adopted more broadly in the coming years, what your efforts now will have a greater ability to survive the transition and to develop over time. So let's transition a little bit into metaverse.
Well, I'll say one of the things you just said goes to one of my hot take thoughts that I had that I jotted down.
You have to do this and yell it though.
Well, you can figure out the clickbaity like headline to yell, but it's okay to tiptoe into this and do a sprint if the marathon and long-term strategy that you were just referring to is far too daunting. So I look at Starbucks, they're looking at infusing Web3 and blockchain technology into their entire loyalty program. They're in this beta stage of what is going to be a huge disruptor, but it's also okay to look at a season-long or campaign-long sprint. We're dropping a single product. We have a single event coming up. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It is the 96th annual or whatever year it is of the parade, single edition of NFT for one specific purpose with a limited amount of utility appropriately aligned to it. It's not the foundation of our entire future, but it's a chance to get our feet wet is a totally acceptable strategy.
Yeah.
I don't know what's that. Don't be afraid to experiment. Is that a
yeah? It's just think of the sprint.
You don't have to establish your multi-year strategy in the first few weeks of this thing.
Yeah, don't get stuck on, and God, have we all not dealt with this? Don't get stuck on, I can't move. I mean, how many times have you had to take a corrective action against the plan? This is not immune to that in any way. You just assume that there's going to be opportunity, there's going to be corrective action necessary, there's going to be fits and starts. And if you kind of, I think a lot of people have kind of lost their enthusiasm for the opportunistic portion of it and are tended to think of, I'm just frozen here waiting for a sure thing. That's by that time everybody's like, well, you missed the boat. It's gotten to the point where now it's going to be hard for you and your brand to associate itself effectively with what's transpired up until now. You may as well it's just like any other marketplace. There's going to be fits and starts. There's going to be corrective actions. There's going to be opportunities that arise, and you need to kind of think of it that way.
I think redirecting that enthusiasm, not trying to capture the entire market behavior or the ethos of Web3 or the wave that was a couple of years ago, but refocusing it. Product launch comes to mind, but let's just say it's a brand that's sponsoring the Olympics next year or the Super Bowl. And they can look at the 6-8 weeks leading up to that event as an on-ramp for fans to pledge their loyalty, engage with the brand, do some actions, collect the NFT, collect a series of NFTs to unlock something some additional access, some sweepstakes, some chance to attend the event, some private meet and greet with the athletes virtually afterwards, something like that. It can be contained. And after the event is over, it's just a nice keepsake and it doesn't stand for anything, but the enthusiasm refocuses back around the product or the experience or campaign that it's aligned to.
And also, if you want to rekindle that fire, you can, because blockchain is forever, right? You know, people own these tokens from earlier. You could always revisit that if you'd like. You don't, you know, you didn't make any promises to your consumers, but somebody has one of your NFTs from an early drop. Why not go back and reward that person for early patronage? You know, it's kind of, we're involved in a project right now with our friends over at GMR Marketing and Nissan for the college football season. Actually, I don't know, MK, if you want to fire up a Heisman House link, if we have one handy, we can put in the chat, which is for the college football season. They are releasing NFTs as part of their virtual Heisman House experience that will have various utility, right? This is fast pass at lines for their in real life activation. This is exclusive content. This is sweepstakes that people can enter if they own them. And they've got that for the duration of the season, right? So that is a really good example of a brand putting in the effort, putting in the work to establish and build an ecosystem that has potential to expand beyond, right? If it stops, they've delivered everything they've promised. It's going to be a great consumer experience. We've seen really good pickup on people who are participating. And if they want to revisit that for next college football season or for other efforts, nice one, Koa. You know, they can do that. So bottom line is there is now an infrastructure in place as they continue to explore this world of Web3. So back to MK's original point, don't be afraid to experiment. You know, get familiar with the technology, get familiar with what it can do and how it can activate your consumers and your fans. And, you know, don't be afraid to dip your toe in the water. So hot take round lightning round. Koa, what do you got? You got one for us?
I would say that there's an underutilized segment or industry. In other words, there's an industry that's not using this technology that I think is a perfect use case. I alluded to it in a tweet and a LinkedIn post, and it's just nonprofits, right? If you think about what's important to a nonprofit brand like Patagonia or so many others out there, trust, transparency, accountability, right? So great way to get donations is through potentially selling tokens. And then a way to be accountable for how that money is actually spent is on the blockchain. It's open, it's public, it's transparent, and it's a great way to connect with those donors. Also, you can reach a global audience, right? So, you know, there's no going through some sort of wire transfer, some sort of ACH transfer. You just buy the token. You now have a smart contract with a bunch of folks that have purchased, that have donated for a cause, and then you can release badges. You can release all kinds of incentives to continue to give, to check in on progress. And I really feel like, especially since at least Ethereum became eco-friendly for a brand like, let's say, Patagonia, with the proof of stake protocol, which just basically means that now interacting on chain is about as eco-friendly as sending an email. So it's gotten rid of the it being sort of dirty and environmentally unfriendly. Now that it shifted over. So my hot take is nonprofits need to jump into Web3 because there's a huge opportunity there.
Very good. Let me reset the room real quick. If you have joined us late, this is Gen City Labs. You have wandered into Hot Takes, the Future of Brands in Web3. We appreciate your joining us today, whether that be on LinkedIn Live, which is kind of our primary initial broadcast point, YouTube or X, or wherever this wonderful content is deployed. So thank you. We do this every couple of weeks. Please do give us a follow on LinkedIn and Twitter and elsewhere. We appreciate you all joining us. So Moreno, we haven't gone to you yet. You got one for us?
As far as a hot take?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, to me, my sense is that from amongst all the components that we've talked about, metaverse and NFT and blockchain and all that, to me, the pushers are going to win in the category of it just seems inevitable to me that the pushers are going to win in the category of NFT tokenization, blockchain, and interoperability of that. That just seems to me like there's so much thought leadership, effort, funding, and approach being poured into that, that all the things that the first time you ever talked to me about NFTs, the first thing that popped into my mind was, oh, my next real estate transaction is going to involve NFT, contract, tokenization. The next time I get my driver's license, and I think it would even happen in California, all of those obvious things seem inevitable, that the path will be pushed in that direction. I'm way less bullish on what could best be described as the metaverse, what it means, how to navigate it, what it's going to deliver. That one seems harder for me to go, oh, don't be foolish. That's going to look like this 5 years from now. It's way easier on that tokenization blockchain piece and the interoperability and getting that down. It seems to me like it's going to be obvious that's going to be part of our lives 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
I will fire a hot take on top of yours, which is, and you guys have heard me say this before, if you've listened to us in the past, you might, but Moreno mentioned the DMV and the tokenization of your driver's license and the ownership of your vehicle. They're already experimenting with Web3. If you lose the technology and innovation race to the DMV, you are doing a good job. There's your hot take. I know it's not that hot of a take, but like, please don't lose to the DMV. Make sure you are trying things in the space, because if the DMV comes out and beats you to this, you will feel deep shame.
Yeah.
Never be able to live it down.
Yeah.
But I agree, Moreno. I think, you know, the tokenization of assets, physical assets, is a thing too, right? This is not, this is like, I don't need a paper deed for my car. I've got a digital asset that's authenticated on chain. Like that, we don't use physical things for anything anymore anyway, right? Even, you know, paper money, right? Credit cards, my iPhone, like I just pay with other things now. So all those things
are credit card now. I'm just like, wait, I can't tap my phone.
Oh, it's maddening. I was at a Walmart, and they don't have Apple Pay at Walmart.
Come on.
I know.
Hey.
They have to seal their payment systems every day to show that they're not skimming and all that.
That's
That's
right.
what they get for not having Apple Pay.
The first thing I thought of when I was introduced to the concept of an NFT was, does this mean that whole title search thing when I buy a house is going to go away? Please tell me it's going to move the needle on that at least.
Be made a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, if it'll do that, I'll be thrilled.
Yeah. And before we move into the metaverse, I actually have another one. And sorry, I'm just coming up with these as we're talking. But you know, the wonders and the joys of blockchain and the wonders and joys of Web3 are decentralization and transparency, right? My hot take would be transparency has some very major drawbacks. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example because this is relevant since, you know, I think at the top I mentioned I'll be in New York next week talking with some of our partners and some of our clients at Advertising Week. And we'll be chatting with Live Nation. We do a lot of work with Live Nation for music festivals, creating sponsorable activations and really cool digital experiences. And they are experimenting with Web3. They have a project called Loud Punks, which allows for lifetime access to music festivals, which is awesome, right? Which is a major benefit, awesome utility, really cool project. And I was talking with them about, you know, like Taylor Swift concerts and saying, hey, wouldn't it be better? Like, wouldn't you have a much easier time if you like issued NFTs to qualified fans and just you had to own that NFT in order to buy a ticket? Wouldn't that prevent you from doing things. And their answer was yes, that, you know, there are definitely advantages. However, transparency for artists is not a great thing if they're not selling out their concerts. They don't necessarily want everybody to know how many tickets have been sold and if they're struggling to sell tickets. Transparency for consumers is not always a great thing because you don't always want people to know that you have a ticket to a show and you're not going to be home in this 6-hour window, right? There's security risks associated with that, which I thought were super interesting points and super interesting topics to review. So, you know, thinking about the drawbacks of transparency is something that we should definitely do and should be taken into consideration when thinking about Web3 brand strategy.
Yeah, the old saying, information on a need-to-know basis takes a serious hit in the kind of the scenarios that you described. You know, privacy is kind of important.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you know, it's just distinguishing between what is important for the public information and what is important to keep private. Because, you know, you may have heard me say this on previous LinkedIn lives, but at the end of the day, a blockchain is just a public ledger, right? It's a database. We live our lives on databases, and it's just this happened at this time between these two people or these two parties, etc. It's a record of all kinds of things, and private, personal identifying information, location information, bio information. A lot of that just doesn't belong in a public database. So certainly brands should consider that. And I see Gary Paul Jr. here in the audience with a great comment. Thank you. I just wanted to call out Goss is a great one of our partners. Check them out if you haven't. They are building a blockchain really for brands to come in and have a trusted network because every project that builds on their ecosystem goes through a third-party audit. So anyway, just want to throw that out there as an alternative to some of these, more public chains. You can kind of pick and choose. So
yeah, no, definitely. Like, I guess maybe not hot take is there are security issues with the blockchain, right?
Yeah,
That
sure.
and yeah, we love the Goss guys. They're doing some really cool work with curated collectibles and curated Web3 experiences so that it massively reduces the potential for risk of fraud. And we see a lot of that, right? You have Lamborghini drop an NFT and then there's 50 similar Lamborghini projects that like copy paste the art and are trying to scam people into buying fake projects. So there are definitely some major security challenges that exist out there and to be aware of. But let's
Shaman. Yeah, you mentioned diving into the metaverse stuff.
I was about to go there. What do you got for us?
Oh man, so in the beginning, the beginning 18 months ago, or whatever the heck, right?
Beginning.
I was like, well, clearly I need to establish a footprint in the metaverse, right? And it's going to be a decentralized metaverse, and it's going to be, so I quickly did that and made a little investment in establishing a footprint in a metaverse. And I realized, like, somebody was asking, so what did you do? What did you buy? Where is it? And I realized, man, there were no fundamentals that applied to the decision I made. Like if I was to buy land in the real world, in a real world, so to speak, I would go, well, who are going to be my neighbors? And who's going to be living in that neighborhood? And there was just no way it was a total crapshoot. I didn't know how many daily users Decentraland had. I had no idea that my plot of land, so to speak, was going to be surrounded by whatever. And to be honest, I'm no further along. It's been 18 months, and if you asked me to make the same decision and take a footprint in the metaverse, I would be no further along. Is it just me?
I will give a hot take on the metaverse, or at least my headline is the metaverse is not what you think it is. Like, it is not just like a digital world where you buy some land and like throw up a sign. If you're a brand, this one definitely takes a lot of thought and a lot of strategy. think of the metaverse as the immersive internet, right?
Mhm.
It is virtual environment. Doesn't matter if it's in an established place or you build your own, because there's some really amazing partners that we have, people that we've met. We've been building virtual reality projects for years and creating immersive environments. All of them can be considered metaverse-ish. You add in the Web3 component and you add a limited supply of a thing within this kind of browsing universe, and you have this 3D environment that you're walking around in. Those combine to kind of create metaverse opportunities, but there is not one that will rule them all, nor is there a if you build it they will come strategy that has been effective to date. We've seen lots of things built, not a lot of traffic anywhere.
Yeah.
So the principles that apply to your standard events, or your standard marketing and brand activations still apply to digital experiences. People are not just going to show up in a space because of the innovative metaverse that exists. They still need the standard things. They need to connect with people. They need to have fun. They need to get value. Like the things that drive people to events already all apply to the metaverse. Make sure you think of that if you're jumping into the space.
Yeah.
And I'd say there's a huge opportunity with everything old is new again in the metaverse. It's this refresh of some fundamentals that Claire's in their metaverse experience in Roblox has avatar pets.
Mhm.
That sounds a lot to me like a Tamagotchi. That sounds like, Pudgy Penguins issuing NFTs through the sale of their physical toys, giving you a birth certificate. Sounds an awful lot like Cabbage Patch Kids to me.
Yep.
And I just think, addictinggames.com or something circa year 2000, I definitely played some escape room games that now, if we labeled the environment a little more 3D, if we made it a multi-person game experience, the fundamentals of an escape room and clicking through and solving a puzzle and finding the pieces, experiences like that are fun. Can they be leveled up into something that can be called a metaverse? Can they be used strategically in a campaign? Yes. It doesn't mean you have to solve the entire world's issues of interoperability, but can be layered in a fun, experiential way, especially if you can trigger some nostalgia.
Yeah, so you and I, MK, we have a big background in producing in real life events. And one of the first things I was like, wow, this is a huge opportunity to create a digital twin of some big brand trade show, right? Yeah, what the heck? You can get people from anywhere and you can make the experience potentially even enrich it visually and experientially in a metaverse, right? But what I didn't think of was, okay, but let's say we decide we're going to have a digital twin of my in real life successful trade show. I still, to Shaman's point, I can't just rely on people to wander by and walk into my trade show. I'm not going to get any financial support if I don't have an audience. All of those basic fundamentals are still part of the equation, as Mike was saying. And the challenge is that path to solving that still is so much easier in real life than it is in whatever Web3 approach you've taken, right? The fundamentals are harder to navigate the current frame of reference you have for doing it. And I think a lot of brands are going, man, I would love to reach more people with a better visual and a better experience. And I know how I can just put up an activation at Grand Central. The people are going to be there. That's not nearly as straightforward if you want to dip your toe metaverse wise. But don't you feel like, geez, it's a huge opportunity. Somebody has to solve this.
I feel like part of the problem is the word "the."
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a visual environment. There's like a million ways you can describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so I think also, I love how science fiction has always inspired future technology, Neil Stephenson and so many, William Gibson, so many great authors. But Ernest Cline's Ready Player One, of course, I think gave us this unrealistic image of the metaverse. Like this one place where everybody goes. The problem is everybody's building their own. They're not interoperable. Even like, games aren't interoperable because file types aren't, interchangeable per se. And the reason we have the open internet is because of a open TCP/IP protocol. The reason we have email is because of an SMTP protocol. We don't have a protocol for an interoperable metaverse space. And until we do, if we do, maybe we go back to the Wi-Fi guys you talked about earlier. But, we need a metaverse like council to come up with a standard protocol.
And has not every quote advanced technology? I remember, Mike, you probably recall when the promise of RFID, right, and how that was going to change the event experience,
right,
and all they ever, and I was part of the masses. We would always think of it in terms of, we're going to be able to track the attendees or track the attendees, right. We didn't sit there and go, if we can uniquely identify these people in real time, imagine how we could upgrade their experience. It was always, we're going to track the hell out of them and make our decisions based on that. And it takes time. It just takes time to dive in, learn, hit a few obstacles. The path becomes more obvious. But sitting on the sideline never works.
Right.
Sitting on the sideline never works.
Yeah.
So,
MK, you had mentioned Starbucks earlier. Did you guys notice they just did a cool metaverse scavenger hunt? They built a 3D Starbucks store, and you kind of go around and there's like little Easter eggs and things, and you can win stuff. It's all part of their Web3 Odyssey.
I totally missed that. I did a pumpkin patch. I had to find pumpkin spice lattes in like a hay field, corn maze, something like that.
Yeah, I did that, Koa. It was fun.
Yeah, they're doing
fun,
good
brief. And by the way, don't expect to create a space that people are just going to go hang out at. It is very much appointment-based interaction, right? It's like having a concert. It's like having a sporting event. It's like any other event. You can expect to attract attention for a short period of time. And if you create something really compelling, maybe people come back. But without a moment in time that is special, all these metaverses that expected to have thousands of people just hanging out in them, they can do that, but there's not a whole lot to do. So, I think we've gotten out a little bit too far over our skis with a lot of the universe creation stuff and not a lot of compelling experience stuff. So that's.
Do you guys have a sense of the adoption rate, success level, however you want to describe it, between a decentralized metaverse as opposed to non-decentralized, a branded, controlled metaverse? It seems like I don't know if decentralization is a decentralized metaverse has caught on yet, has it?
It hasn't. I'll say the examples are Roblox or Fortnite, right? Those are centralized metaverse experiences. They're doing a great job. They have a very compelling gaming experience that's driving tens of millions of participants to it every month.
That's the key.
And so brand experiences that are built within that universe capitalize on that audience already coming, and then you can create experiences. The difference is the reason a decentralized metaverse is going to be so valuable is I can take the digital assets that I own, the experiences that I've had, and that could be my profile picture, that could be my car, right? I own and drive a Tesla. If I could bring that in. And it's about having interoperable digital assets that allow me to walk into that space with who I am, not having to start from scratch at a junior level with a random screen name and sign up for an account and do all those things. It's this ability to take all the things I own and all the things I've earned and to immediately have them come with me into a space to interact with people. So when you think about that opportunity to have your digital identity be already established, that's where the real opportunities for decentralization come. That's where interoperability comes in. That's where you have some real opportunities to establish long-term relationships with consumers who, if you give them things of value, will take it with them from place to place to place. So that's where I think we will get to. We aren't there yet. Right now, Roblox and Fortnite are dominating, but you can't buy a skin in Fortnite and bring it over to Roblox, right? You can't buy anything in the real world and bring it into Fortnite or Roblox.
But I'll say I'm cheering on Ready Player Me as the
Mhm.
interoperable avatar service. We brought it up earlier. We were talking to a major motorcycle brand of, does a motorcycle jacket exist interoperably because it gets built on the avatar, and then the avatar plugs into spatial and other immersive environments, metaverses, whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
Placing bets on the pieces that are building for interoperability now is certainly a move brands can do. Fashion, Adidas, Gucci, those brands are already creating tracksuits and apparel and accessories in Ready Player Me.
Yeah.
So that as metaverse opportunities expand, your acquired pieces go right with you.
Yeah, the concept of decentralization, it seemed like, at first glance, it seemed like the big shift was shifting the balance of power between big power and shifting it towards consumers,
Mhm.
attendees, users of a decentralized approach, right? It shifts that dynamic, and you're no longer up against Amazon. You're in a true open environment where everybody has similar leverages.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you're not
But that's so
beholden.
intangible, right? You have to be committed to that resource and financially to make that kind of utopian view of it work. It seems like the non-decentralized side's going to win. I don't know why, but
They certainly have more resources.
yeah.
And that's why they could build, and because it is expensive to build a 3D environment still, right? I mean, look at the controversy that just happened with Unity, right? I don't have to tell you three, but maybe some folks in the audience who are unaware, Unity changed their pricing model recently, and it was going to cost a lot more for studios like ours, like Gen City Labs, and others who build products and build environments on behalf of brand clients, and even for those clients, even to keep them up, right, and to keep them published. And it was it the CEO stepped down, or someone on the C-level recently stepped down as part of the controversy. So my point is, it's not only is it expensive to build, but to your point, Morena, you think like the centralized bodies that have the resources to build these things, at the they have the cash to do it, but at some point, it's going to be this trade-off between sort of security and convenience, like everything, right? You said not beholden to Amazon. Ironically, a lot of these metaverses are relying on AWS to host server space, to pixel stream an environment to you, and to your screen. So I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if you think about it, maybe the decentralized approach, whether it quote wins or not, I don't think there's going to be, but the decentralized approach might inform somebody with more resources and power that's taking a centralized approach to maybe tweak their approach a little bit and adopt some of those tenets, right?
Yeah. And what Koa is talking about, if you guys aren't familiar, Unity is a 3D development platform that is used by about half of the games out there. Unreal Engine is the other one, major competitor. So if you've played a game on a console or on your computer, chances are it was built in Unity or Unreal in the last few years. So platform dependency is the phrase. If you are dependent on a platform for your livelihood, and that could be Facebook, that could be Twitter, that could be Instagram, and they can change their terms of service any day. If you were a game that people are selling skins and there's a secondary market and you decide to stop allowing that, well, I just bought a skin for $1,000. Now it's useless, right? It's worthless. So when you are dependent on the whims of a platform, that is the challenge with centralization. That means that you are beholden to somebody, not you, and they change their terms of service, they change their access, they change their pricing. It can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it, and it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're doing it. And it can have a major impact on what you're doing, how you're And that is why decentralization is such an attractive option, because things, especially, you look at various blockchains, you look at Web3, that allows people to escape platform dependency and build without having fear of some centralized entity changing things on you and pulling the rug up.
And the thought process isn't mutually exclusive, right? You like a big like a Unity, a platform that is thinking about changing. We tend to just take for granted that they're going to change in favor of themselves.
Oh, sure.
Without thinking about who's subject to that change and how it affects them. Hopefully, decentralization efforts inform. You might want to rethink the changes you're making with a little empathy for who it's going to affect.
Yeah.
Maybe it, sometimes just approaches push in the direction of the powers that be, and they start thinking in terms of, let's create an environment that's, as much as anything, a win-win, for a overused coined phrase, but it can, that's the way the light bulb goes off, if it ever does, right?
Yeah.
Just enough of a groundswell of, we're sick and tired of this. And maybe decentralization has kind of that vibe to it. We're sick and tired of the balance of power here, and we're going in this direction, and it happened.
I mean, the challenge is, like, you look at how many folks have built up a following on these centralized platforms, any of them, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever. And then, as Mike pointed out, Elon bought it and has now done a lot of changes that's caused people to, for a minute there, was like a 5-day window to move to Threads. And now it's got to come. But yeah, I don't know how many people are actually using it. But point being, it's like, there's two challenges that are kind of opposing. One is you go where the network already exists. And in most cases, that's these centralized platforms, and you can attract people that way. The other challenge is you build your own in a decentralized way, and you kind of bring a following over. But it's like, if enough people get burned by changes of service, by this platform dependency, they might be inspired to move towards a decentralized platform where they can, take custody of the things of value. Mike also mentioned, Fortnite. I probably mentioned this before. I have a 12-year-old son. I've spent so much money on V-Bucks that I don't even want to look at it. And it's never going to go out of that platform. It's always going to live there. And my son always tells me, that's all he asks for is digital money to buy stuff in his games. That'll be locked in there forever. And he's like, oh, I can just sell my account. I'm like, where? What eBay? You can't sell your username and password. Yeah, people do it. I'm like, there's a better way, but the gaming industry, there's a hot take we could talk about maybe next time. The gaming industry.
Gaming industry is its own animal for sure. All right. Well, we are running out of time, so I want one last lightning round go round. MK, you're going to start us off. Final thoughts in 30 seconds or less about the future of Web3 and brands.
Don't cheap out on your creative or your art. It is an expression of your brand. It is a core part of the campaign. Just because you're seeing pixelated art and things like that have been done in Web3, and you might be critical of the art style of things you see, don't lower your brand standards. Don't try to do this half-assed. We've seen it for a number of native Web3 brands. They launch a whole collection and then get negative feedback and are left trying to figure out how to upgrade it later and make it more collectible and aesthetic. Just really take time and think about the creative vision. If you're creating some kind of NFT token or metaverse wearable or whatever, take some time and be really, really proud of what you're putting out.
Moreno, what do you got?
If I was a brand, I would focus on the opportunity on the tokenization, blockchain, interoperability side, and think about what my strategy would be to leverage those for a better consumer experience against the brand.
Koa.
I would say, before you even think about technology, think about building a community, right? So the old acronym SNAP, Status, Networking, Access, Perks. Think about that framework and then apply the right technology to building that community around your brand.
And I'll wrap it up with 3 words: loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. Your existing, I know, loyalty. Your existing consumer base is going to be your biggest advocates, your biggest evangelists, your biggest spenders. Look to them and look to utilizing new ways to create deeper relationships and more meaningful ones with them. They're going to be the best and easiest path forward. And don't be afraid to experiment while you're doing it. So with that, I will say thank you from our thank you to our GCL panel, MK Koa Moreno. From me, Mike Shaman, I appreciate your time and attention. Join us in a couple of weeks. We'll have a new fun topic. And if you are going to be out in New York next week for Advertising Week, drop us a line. Some of us will be there. We'll be wandering. We would love to catch up with anybody and everybody in person. And we appreciate you all. So thanks very much. We'll see you in a few weeks.